Rain pelted the cobblestone streets of Ravenshire, transforming the ancient city into a labyrinth of puddles and shadows. Rose Thornfield hurried along the narrow alleyways, her worn boots splashing through the gathering water. She clutched her umbrella tighter as thunder rumbled overhead, the sound reverberating through the medieval buildings that lined the street. Rose had always felt out of place in Ravenshire, a city steeped in superstition and whispers of the supernatural. While others feared the legends of vampires that had supposedly ruled these lands for centuries, Rose found herself strangely drawn to the mysteries that lurked in the shadows. Her grandmother had called it old blood, a connection to something ancient and powerful that flowed through their family line. Rose had dismissed it as the ramblings of a woman whose mind had begun to wander in her final years. Monsters are just stories, Rose whispered to herself, a mantra she had repeated since childhood. And even if they were real, they would not want anything to do with ordinary humans like me. It was this belief that had shaped Rose's quiet, solitary life. At 24, she worked as a conservator at Ravenshire's Historical Society, restoring ancient texts that no one else seemed to care about. It was safer this way, she told herself. No attachments, no disappointments. Her mother had abandoned her as a child. Her father had drunk himself to death, and her grandmother, the only person who had truly loved her, was gone. Rose had learned early that caring for others only led to pain. As she rounded the corner toward the town square, a flash of lightning illuminated the night, and Rose froze. There, huddled beneath the ancient stone fountain, was a figure that seemed to both belong to the night and stand apart from it. A man. No, something more than a man. Knelt with his head bowed, shoulders shaking in what appeared to be silent sobs. His clothing was unlike anything Rose had seen outside of her ancient texts. A high-collared coat of midnight blue velvet, embroidered with silver thread that caught what little light penetrated the storm. His hair, as black as the night itself, fell in waves around a face that seemed carved from marble. Lightning flashed again, and Rose gasped. In that instant, she saw his eyes, crimson like fresh blood, ringed with gold, and knew what he was. The stories were true. Vampires did exist, and one was weeping in the town square. Every instinct told Rose to run, to hide, to protect herself from this creature of darkness. Instead, she found herself walking toward him, drawn by something she couldn't explain. A pull like gravity, inescapable and natural. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice nearly lost in the rumble of thunder. The vampire's head snapped up, those inhuman eyes widening with shock, then narrowing with suspicion. He did not speak, but Rose could feel the weight of his gaze as it moved over her face, searching for something. "You are getting soaked," Rose continued, stepping closer and extending her umbrella to shelter him from the rain. "Here." His laughter was bitter and cold. "You offer shelter to a monster, little human? Do you not know what I am?" "I know what you seem to be," Rose replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "And right now, you seem to be someone who needs an umbrella." For a long moment, the vampire stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, with a grace that no human could possess, he rose to his full height, towering over Rose. "You should not be kind to creatures like me, Rose Thornfield." Rose stepped back, her heart racing. "How do you know my name?" The vampire's lips curved into a sad smile. "I have known your name for centuries, though we have never met until this moment. I have seen your face in my dreams since before your grandmother's grandmother was born." Lightning illuminated the square once more, and Rose saw something impossible in his eyes. Recognition, longing, and a bone-deep sorrow that transcended time. "I am Prince Matthias of House Drackle," he said, his voice carrying despite the rain. "And you, Rose Thornfield, are the woman destined to either save my soul or destroy it completely." With those words, the storm intensified, a gust of wind turning Rose's umbrella inside out. When she managed to right it and looked up again, the vampire prince was gone, leaving only a single drop of what appeared to be blood on the stone where he had knelt. Rose stood frozen, rain soaking through her coat, wondering if she had imagined the entire encounter. But the drop of blood remained, gleaming unnaturally bright in the darkness, and Rose knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same. The Ravenshire Historical Society was housed in what had once been the city's grand library, a Gothic structure of stone and stained glass that had stood for over 400 years. Rose worked in the basement archives, a labyrinth of shelves containing texts too fragile or controversial for public display. Today, however, she could not concentrate on her work. Her mind kept returning to the strange encounter in the rain, to eyes the color of blood and words that hinted at an impossible destiny. "You look like you have seen a ghost," said Dr. Eleanor Walsh, the Society's director, as she placed a stack of newly acquired manuscripts on Rose's desk. "Or perhaps something worse?" Rose forced a smile. "Just tired. The storm kept me awake." Dr. Walsh's eyes narrowed slightly. At 65, with her silver hair always perfectly coiffed and her tweed suits impeccably tailored, she had the air of someone who knew far more than she revealed. Strange weather indeed, the kind that wakes old things best left sleeping. Before Rose could respond, Dr. Walsh placed a slender volume bound in dark leather atop the stack of manuscripts. "This arrived for you this morning. No sender information, but it has your name on it." Rose stared at the book. Her name was indeed embossed on the cover in silver lettering that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "I did not order this. Nevertheless, it belongs to you." Dr. Walsh turned to leave, then paused. "Be careful, Rose. There are things in this world that hunger for what flows in your veins." With that cryptic warning, she disappeared among the shelves, leaving Rose alone with the mysterious book. With trembling fingers, Rose opened the cover to reveal pages of handwritten text in an elegant, archaic script. The first line made her blood run cold. "To Rose Thornfield, whose blood calls to mine across the centuries. I have waited for you." Rose slammed the book shut, her heart pounding. It was impossible. The vampire she had met last night could not have known where she worked, could not have delivered this book. And yet, the evidence lay before her, as real and tangible as the rain had been on her skin. Gathering her courage, Rose opened the book again and began to read. It was a history, Matthias's history, beginning with his human life in the 15th century and his transformation into a vampire against his will. He wrote of centuries spent in darkness, of a growing emptiness that threatened to consume him entirely, and of dreams that began nearly 100 years ago. Dreams of a woman with Rose's face who offered him something he had long forgotten: compassion. The final pages contained a desperate plea. "I know you fear what I am, as you should. But there is more to this story, our story, than I can commit to these pages. Meet me tonight at the ruins of St. Magdalene's Abbey. Come alone and I will tell you everything. The choice to stay or flee will be yours. But know this, what binds us is older than my curse and stronger than your fear. Until tonight." And Rose closed the book, her mind racing. Every rational thought told her to ignore this invitation, to burn the book and forget she had ever seen the vampire prince. And yet, something deeper than reason pulled at her, the same inexplicable force that had drawn her to him in the rain. As she struggled with her decision, the lights in the archives flickered, and Rose felt a chill that had nothing to do with the basement's perpetual dampness. Looking up, she found herself staring into the cold eyes of a man she had never seen before. Tall and gaunt, with silvery hair cropped close to his scalp, he wore the uniform of a courier but carried himself like a soldier. "Can I help you?" Rose asked, instinctively sliding the book under a pile of papers. The man's lips curved into what might have been a smile, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect. "Miss Thornfield, I bring a message from the Council of Night. I do not know what that is. Of course you do not, the man replied, his voice as smooth and emotionless as polished stone. But Prince Matthias does, and it seems he has taken an interest in you. The council wishes to extend an invitation. What kind of invitation? The courier placed an envelope on her desk, the paper so black it seemed to absorb the light around it. All the details are contained within. The council is most eager to make your acquaintance. Before Rose could ask another question, the man turned and walked away, his footsteps making no sound on the stone floor. When he reached the shadows at the edge of the room, he seemed to dissolve into them, leaving Rose alone once more. With shaking hands, Rose opened the black envelope. Inside was a card embossed with a seal, a serpent devouring its own tail, and an address in the oldest part of Ravenshire, along with instructions to present herself at midnight the following evening. Rose felt trapped between two impossible choices. Meet Matthias alone at the Abbey ruins tonight, or attend this mysterious council of night tomorrow. Both options terrified her, but the thought of never knowing, of returning to her safe, predictable life as if nothing had happened, terrified her more. "What would you do, Gran?" she whispered, thinking of the woman who had raised her, who had told her stories of old blood and ancient pacts. "What am I supposed to do?" As if in answer, a single page slipped from between the covers of Matthias's book. A drawing, yellowed with age, of a woman who could have been Rose's twin, standing beneath an umbrella in the rain. On the back, written in the same elegant script, were the words. She offered her umbrella to a crying vampire prince, but he already knew their destiny. Rose made her decision. She would go to the Abbey tonight. Whatever fate awaited her there, she would face it with the same compassion that had led her to offer her umbrella to a weeping monster in the rain. St. Magdalene's Abbey had been abandoned for centuries, its stone walls crumbling beneath the relentless assault of time and weather. Located on the outskirts of Ravenshire, surrounded by ancient oak trees and overgrown gardens, it had once been a place of sanctuary and prayer. Now, as Rose approached through the moonlit grounds, it felt like a threshold between worlds. She had dressed carefully, choosing practicality over fashion. Sturdy boots, dark jeans, and a heavy sweater beneath her coat. In her bag, she carried a flashlight, her phone, though she doubted it would work here, and the mysterious book that had started this journey. Around her neck hung her grandmother's pendant, a small silver disc engraved with symbols Rose had never been able to decipher. The Abbey's main hall was open to the sky, its roof long gone, allowing moonlight to pour in and illuminate the space with an ethereal glow. Rose stood in the center, surrounded by the remains of what had once been grand arches and delicate stone carvings. "I was not certain you would come." Rose turned to find Matthias standing in the shadow of a partially collapsed wall, his presence somehow making the ancient ruins feel even older, more timeless. Tonight he wore simpler clothing, a black shirt, tailored trousers, and a coat that fell to his knees, but still carried himself with the unmistakable authority of royalty. "Neither was I," Rose admitted. "Your book was persuasive." Matthias stepped into the moonlight, and Rose was struck again by his inhuman beauty. His skin was pale as marble but seemed to hold an inner luminescence, and his eyes, which had been blood-red in the rain, now appeared more like deep burgundy, still ringed with gold. "You must have questions," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "Hundreds." Rose took a deep breath. "But I will start with the most important one. What did you mean when you said I was destined to save or destroy your soul?" A sad smile touched Matthias's lips. "Direct and unafraid. Your blood speaks true." He gestured to a stone bench that remained intact amid the ruins. "Will you sit? The story is not a short one." Rose hesitated, then sat, watching as Matthias remained standing, his gaze fixed on the moon above them. "I was born human in 1432, he began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. The second son of a nobleman with more ambition than sense. When I was 25, my father arranged a political marriage to strengthen our family's position. The bride was Lady Eliza Thornfield. Rose felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. Thornfield? Like me? Matthias nodded. Your ancestor, and the beginning of both my curse and my salvation. He told her how Eliza had possessed extraordinary gifts, the ability to see beyond the veil that separated the living from the dead, to heal with her touch, to know things that no human should know. These gifts came from her blood, which was rumored to contain traces of an ancient power, something older than humanity itself. We were to be married on the winter solstice, Matthias continued. But there were others who coveted Eliza's gifts, vampires who believed that consuming her blood would grant them unimaginable power. They attacked during our wedding feast. His voice grew tight with remembered pain. Eliza died in my arms, her blood spilling across the floor of my family's great hall. In my grief and rage, I swore I would hunt down every vampire responsible. What I did not know was that one of them, a monster named Lord Ambrose, had different plans for me. Matthias turned to face Rose, his eyes now blazing with supernatural light. Ambrose did not want to simply kill me. He wanted to punish me for daring to love someone like Eliza, for thinking I could protect her. He transformed me into the very thing I hated most, a vampire. But that was not the worst of his cruelty, Matthias continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. As my human life drained away and the darkness of vampirism filled me, Ambrose revealed the truth. Eliza's blood contained a prophecy. She was the first of a bloodline that would one day produce a woman capable of breaking the curse of vampirism itself, a woman whose compassion would be powerful enough to restore a monster's humanity. Me, Rose whispered. You, Matthias agreed, though Ambrose did not believe it would be possible. He thought by turning me, by making me a monster for eternity, he was ensuring I would never find redemption. What he did not anticipate was that the bond between Eliza and me had already been formed. Her blood called to mine across centuries, showing me visions of you long before you were born. Rose touched the pendant at her throat, a nervous gesture. And the council? I received an invitation today. Matthias's expression darkened. The Council of Night is the governing body of vampires in this region. They have monitored your family for generations, waiting for the one who would fulfill the prophecy. If they have contacted you directly, it means they know about our meeting in the rain. They will try to prevent what is meant to be. Which is what, exactly? Rose asked, finding courage in her growing confusion. You speak of destiny and prophecy, but what does that mean for me? For my life? Matthias approached slowly, then knelt before her, his movements graceful yet cautious, as if afraid she might flee. It means you have a choice that no one else can make. According to the prophecy, if you freely offer your blood to me, not taken but given, it could break my curse. I could become human again, mortal, free of the darkness that has consumed me for 600 years. And if I refuse? Pain flickered across his perfect features. Then the darkness wins. My soul, what remains of it, will finally be lost. I will become what Ambrose always intended, a monster without redemption. Rose studied him, this creature of night who spoke of curses and salvation. Why were you crying? That night in the rain. The question seemed to catch him off guard. I had just learned that the last of Ambrose's followers had been destroyed. I thought I would feel triumph, perhaps peace. Instead, I felt hollow. 6 centuries of existence, of watching humanity evolve while I remained unchanged, of feeding on blood to sustain an unnatural life. It all seemed pointless. And then, in my moment of deepest despair, you appeared, offering shelter to a monster you should have fled from. Just like in the drawing, Rose murmured. Yes, Matthias's voice softened. When I saw you standing there with your umbrella, exactly as I had dreamed for 100 years, I knew the prophecy was true, but I also knew what fulfilling it would mean for you. What would it mean? Matthias looked away. Your blood is special, Rose. It carries power beyond human understanding. Giving it freely to break my curse would change you irrevocably. You would not become a vampire, but you would no longer be entirely human either. You would exist between worlds, seeing things others cannot see, knowing things others cannot know. It is not a fate I would wish on anyone, especially not someone as kind as you. Rose stood, needing to move to think. The moonlight cast her shadow long across the abbey floor. And the council? What do they want with me? They want your blood for themselves, Matthias said bluntly. They believe it could grant them immunity to their weaknesses, the ability to walk in sunlight, perhaps even immortality without the need to feed. They will not ask for it to be given. They will take it. As if summoned by his words, a cold wind swept through the abbey, carrying with it the scent of decay and something metallic, like old blood. Matthias was on his feet in an instant, positioning himself between Rose and the entrance to the ruins. They are coming, he hissed, his eyes shifting to that terrible crimson. You must leave now. There is a passage beneath the altar that leads to the old cemetery. Run, and do not stop until you reach hallowed ground. Rose stood frozen, fear warring with a strange, inexplicable reluctance to leave him. What about you? Matthias's smile was fierce, predatory. I have fought the council's enforcers before. I can do so again. He pressed something into her hand, a small, ornate key that seemed to hum with energy. This will open any door that leads to safety. It is attuned to your blood. Now go. Rose hesitated only a moment longer before turning and running toward the remains of the altar. As she reached it, she heard the sound of unnatural movement behind her. Too fast to be human, too silent to be natural. Glancing back, she saw Matthias surrounded by 3 figures in dark clothing, their eyes glowing like embers in the night. Run! Matthias shouted, and then he was moving with impossible speed, colliding with the nearest attacker in a blur of violence. Rose found the passage Matthias had described, a narrow stone staircase leading down into darkness. With one last look at the supernatural battle unfolding in the abbey, she descended into the unknown, clutching the key that hummed with ancient power. The passage was older than the abbey itself, its walls carved with symbols that matched those on Rose's pendant. As she moved deeper underground, guided only by the weak beam of her flashlight, Rose felt as though she were traveling not just through space but through time, back to an era when the boundary between the mortal world and something else, something older and more powerful, had been thinner. The tunnel eventually opened into a small chamber that might once have been a crypt. Stone sarcophagi lined the walls, their carved lids depicting knights and ladies in repose. At the center of the room stood a pedestal with a curious depression in its surface, a depression that matched the shape of Rose's pendant exactly. Acting on instinct, Rose removed the pendant and placed it in the carved hollow. The effect was immediate. Light poured from the seams of the pedestal, illuminating the entire chamber with a silver-blue glow. One of the sarcophagi slid aside with a grinding of stone on stone, revealing another passageway. Rose retrieved her pendant and continued her flight, emerging finally in Ravenshire's ancient cemetery, a place of tilting headstones and weathered mausoleums. The moon still hung high in the night sky, casting everything in an ethereal light that made the boundary between life and death seem permeable, uncertain. She made her way to the cemetery's small chapel, a structure of worn stone that had stood for centuries. The door was locked, but the key Matthias had given her fit perfectly, turning with a soft click that felt like permission. Inside, the chapel was simple. Wooden pews, a modest altar, stained glass windows that glowed faintly in the moonlight filtering through them. Rose sank onto one of the pews, her mind racing. Everything Matthias had told her seemed impossible, and yet the evidence surrounded her. The secret passage, the responding pedestal, the key that opened locked doors. And more than that, there was a truth she felt in her bones, in her blood. She was connected to this strange vampire prince in ways she could not fully comprehend. As her breathing slowed and her panic receded, Rose became aware of another presence in the chapel. Sitting in the shadows of the back pew was a woman with silver hair and familiar eyes. Dr. Eleanor Walsh. "I thought you might come here," Dr. Walsh said calmly, as if finding her employee in an abandoned chapel in the middle of the night was perfectly normal. The old blood always seeks sanctuary when threatened. Rose stared at her. "You know about this? About vampires and prophecies and whatever I am?" Dr. Walsh smiled, the expression both kind and sad. "My dear, I have been watching over your family for nearly 40 years. When your grandmother realized what you were, what you would become, she asked me to guide you when the time came." "My grandmother knew?" Rose felt betrayed, confused. "Why did she not tell me? Would you have believed her?" Dr. Walsh asked gently. "Or would you have thought her mad, as you sometimes did when she spoke of the old blood and ancient pacts? Isabel wanted to protect you for as long as possible. She knew the burden of knowledge could be as heavy as the burden of destiny." Rose touched her pendant, feeling its subtle warmth against her skin. "What am I supposed to do? Matthias says I can break his curse with my blood, but it would change me forever. And there is this council that wants to use me for their own purposes. The choice has always been yours, Rose," Dr. Walsh said, her voice taking on a formal quality that suggested she was reciting something memorized long ago. "The prophecy is clear on that point. By freely given compassion shall the monster be unmade, and by blood freely shared shall two broken souls be healed as one." "That does not sound like a choice," Rose objected. "It sounds like I am destined to save him." Dr. Walsh shook her head. "Destiny offers pathways, not certainties. You can walk away from this, leave Ravenshire behind. The council would not find you if you were under the protection of the Order." "What order?" "The Order of the Eternal Flame," Dr. Walsh replied, as if this should be obvious. "We have stood against the darkness since before the Council of Night existed. We are the keepers of balance, the guardians of boundaries. And we have protected your bloodline for generations, waiting for you." Rose felt overwhelmed. In the span of a day, her orderly, predictable life had shattered, revealing a world of supernatural politics and ancient prophecies beneath the surface. "Why me? What makes my blood so special?" Dr. Walsh's expression softened. "Your blood carries an echo of what existed before vampires, before the division between light and dark became so absolute. It is not just about what you can do for Prince Matthias. It is about what the two of you together might mean for all who walk between worlds." Before Rose could ask another question, the chapel door burst open, and Matthias staggered in. His elegant clothing was torn and stained with blood, some of it his own, judging by the dark wounds visible through the rips in his shirt. His eyes burned crimson in the darkness, and his fangs were fully extended, giving him a truly monstrous appearance. Dr. Walsh was on her feet instantly, positioning herself between Rose and the wounded vampire prince. From beneath her coat, she produced a slender wooden stake, its tip gleaming with what looked like silver. "Stay back, Your Highness," she warned, her voice taking on an authority Rose had never heard before. "This is hallowed ground, and I am sworn to protect her." Matthias stopped, swaying slightly. The predatory rage in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something like resignation. "I am not here to harm her, Watcher. I came to warn you both. The Council's enforcers have retreated, but they will return with greater numbers. They know what Rose is now. How did they find out?" Dr. Walsh demanded, not lowering her weapon. A traitor in my household? Matthias replied, grimacing in pain. Someone who has observed my preparations these past weeks and reported to Lord Cashin. They know about the prophecy, about Rose's blood, about everything. Dr. Walsh cursed softly. Then we have no time to waste. Rose must be taken to the sanctuary immediately. No. Matthias straightened, his supernatural strength allowing him to push through his injuries. If Rose leaves now, the council will hunt her for the rest of her life. Lord Cashin does not relinquish a prize once he has set his sights on it. And what do you propose? Dr. Walsh challenged. That she offer herself to you instead? That she sacrifice her humanity to fulfill your redemption? The accusations seemed to wound Matthias more deeply than his physical injuries. I would never ask that of her. Never. He turned to Rose, his eyes fading from crimson to their usual burgundy. I came to tell you that I release you from any obligation the prophecy might suggest. Your compassion in the rain was gift enough. I will face the council alone and buy you time to escape with the Watcher. Rose looked between Matthias and Dr. Walsh, these two beings who had been preparing for her arrival her entire life. One offered protection at the cost of running forever. The other offered to sacrifice himself so she might escape. Neither seemed to consider that she might have a different choice in mind. I want to know more, Rose said firmly, surprised by her own resolve. About the prophecy, about my blood, about all of it. Before I make any decision, I need the full truth. Dr. Walsh and Matthias exchanged a look that contained centuries of mutual distrust. The full truth, Matthias said quietly, is that the prophecy has been mistranslated. Deliberately. Dr. Walsh inhaled sharply. You cannot know that. I can and do, Matthias countered. I have spent 600 years searching for the original text, and I found it 3 months ago, buried in the archives of my family's ancestral home. The prophecy never spoke of breaking my curse alone. It spoke of transformation for both of us. What kind of transformation? Rose asked. Matthias met her gaze steadily. If you freely offer your blood to me, I would indeed be freed from the darkness of vampirism. But you would not simply become something other than human. You would gain powers beyond imagining, the ability to walk between worlds, to command elements, to heal or harm with a touch. And we would be bound together, neither fully mortal nor immortal, but something new. That is heresy, Dr. Walsh hissed. The Order has protected the Thornfield bloodline precisely to prevent such a union. It would upset the balance we have maintained for millennia. The balance is already failing, Matthias replied. The council grows more powerful every decade. The darkness spreads, and your order dwindles. Perhaps it is time for something new. Rose moved to stand between them, feeling the weight of centuries of conflict in their exchange. I need time to think, she said. And we need a safe place to do that, away from the council's enforcers. Dr. Walsh sighed, lowering her weapon. There is a safe house on the edge of town. We can go there tonight, and you can make your decision when you have had time to process everything. Matthias nodded. I know the place. It has stood neutral ground between the Order and my kind for generations. I will escort you there and then leave you to your deliberations. Rose looked at the wounded vampire prince, at the blood seeping through his torn clothing, and made a smaller but no less significant choice. You need to heal first. You are in no condition to protect anyone. Before either Dr. Walsh or Matthias could object, Rose reached into her bag and removed a small pocket knife she carried for opening packages at the Historical Society. With deliberate movements, she cut a shallow line across her palm, wincing at the sting. Rose, no. Dr. Walsh lunged forward, but it was too late. Rose held out her bleeding hand to Matthias. Not to break your curse. Not yet. but enough to heal your wounds so you can protect us on the way to the safe house. Matthias stared at her outstretched hand, his eyes shifting back to crimson as the scent of her blood filled the chapel. For a moment he looked truly inhuman, a predator confronted with prey too tempting to resist. Then, with visible effort, he regained control. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice rough with hunger and restraint. Rose nodded, though her heart raced with fear and something else, something like anticipation. "I offer this freely to heal you, nothing more." Matthias approached slowly, then took her hand in his. His touch was cool but not cold, and gentler than Rose had expected. With reverence, he brought her bleeding palm to his lips. The first touch of his mouth against her wound sent a shock through Rose's body. Not pain, but a sensation like lightning contained beneath her skin. As Matthias drank, his eyes locked with hers, she felt a connection forming between them, a bridge across which impressions and emotions flowed freely. She saw glimpses of his long life, centuries of loneliness, of struggling against the darkness within him, of searching for meaning in an existence that had been forced upon him. She felt his guilt over lives taken to sustain his own, his grief for the human man he had once been, and beneath it all, a desperate hope that had been kindled the moment she had offered her umbrella in the rain. After what seemed like both an eternity and an instant, Matthias released her hand and stepped back. Before Rose's eyes, his wounds began to close, the torn flesh knitting together with unnatural speed. "Thank you," he said, his voice steadier now, stronger. "I have never tasted blood like yours. It is extraordinary." Dr. Walsh moved forward with a handkerchief, wrapping it around Rose's cut palm. "That was reckless," she chided, though her tone lacked real anger. "Blood freely given is powerful, especially your blood. The connection you just established cannot be undone." Rose looked at her bandaged hand, then at Matthias, who watched her with an expression of wonder and uncertainty. "I think," she said slowly, "that was what I intended." The safe house was a Victorian manor on the outskirts of Ravenshire, its stone walls covered in ivy and its gardens wild and overgrown. From the outside, it appeared abandoned, but as they approached, Rose could feel a subtle vibration in the air, like the hum of energy contained behind a barrier. Dr. Walsh placed her palm against the massive wooden door, murmuring words too low for Rose to catch. The door swung open, revealing an interior that defied the manor's decrepit exterior. Inside, everything was meticulously maintained. Polished wood floors, elegant furniture, and walls lined with books and strange artifacts. "Welcome to Thornfield Manor," Dr. Walsh said, ushering Rose inside. "Your family's ancestral home, though it has been in the Order's care for generations." Rose stepped into the entrance hall, overwhelmed by a powerful sense of déjà vu. "I have dreamed of this place," she whispered. The grand staircase, the stained glass window above it. "The blood remembers," Matthias said, remaining on the threshold. "This was where Eliza grew up, where I first met her. I cannot enter without invitation, despite the neutrality pact. The house recognizes me as vampire." Rose turned to him. After what they had shared through her blood, she could not imagine sending him away. "Please come in, Matthias." The vampire prince inclined his head in a formal gesture of gratitude, then stepped across the threshold. As his foot touched the polished floor, the house seemed to react, lights flickering, the air growing heavier, as if the very building recognized an ancient enemy entering its domain. "It has been 400 years since I stood in this hall," Matthias said, his voice thick with emotion. "Much has changed, but the heart of it remains the same." Dr. Walsh led them to a sitting room where a fire already burned in the grate, casting warm light over comfortable furnishings that somehow managed to be both antique and welcoming. On a table near the window sat a leather-bound book much like the one Matthias had sent Rose, but older, its pages yellowed with age. "The Thornfield Codex," Dr. Walsh explained, seeing Rose's interest. "Your family's history, including everything we know about the prophecy. I thought you might want to read it before making your decision." Rose approached the book cautiously. "You seem to have accepted that the decision is mine to make." Dr. Walsh smiled wearily. "I have served the Order for 50 years, Rose. In that time, I have seen enough to know that destiny finds a way, regardless of our efforts to control it. The moment you offered your blood to Prince Matthias in the chapel, I knew my role had changed from protector to witness." Matthias remained near the door, his posture suggesting he was ready to flee or fight at a moment's notice. "The council will not wait long to act. Lord Cashin desires power above all else, and Rose's blood represents power unimaginable. Then we should prepare for an attack," Dr. Walsh said pragmatically. "The manor's defenses are strong, but they were designed to keep vampires out, not to withstand a coordinated assault by the council's enforcers." Rose sat in a chair near the fire, suddenly exhausted. The events of the day, from the strange book at work to the confrontation at the abbey to the blood sharing in the chapel, had drained her more thoroughly than she had realized. "I need to rest," she admitted, "just for a few hours. Then I will read the codex and make my decision." Dr. Walsh nodded. "There is a bedroom prepared for you upstairs. The same room that was once Eliza's, actually. I will wake you if there is any sign of danger." Rose stood, swaying slightly with fatigue. Matthias moved as if to steady her, then stopped himself, maintaining a respectful distance. "Rest well," he said softly. "I will stand guard while you sleep." As Rose climbed the grand staircase, she could feel the weight of their gazes following her. Dr. Walsh's concerned and protective, Matthias's intense and hopeful. The choice before her seemed impossible. Run and hide with the Order, forever hunted by the Council. Offer her blood to Matthias and be transformed into something neither human nor vampire. Or find some third path that neither of her unusual guardians had considered. The bedroom was exactly as she had seen it in her dreams. A four-poster bed draped in blue velvet, a window seat overlooking the gardens, bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. Rose sank onto the bed, not bothering to undress, and was asleep almost instantly. She dreamed of blood and moonlight, of a ceremony performed in this very house centuries ago, and of a woman who looked like her but wore clothing from another era. In the dream, this woman, Eliza, stood before an altar, a silver knife in her hand, while a young Matthias knelt before her, his eyes still human, filled with love and trepidation. "By my blood freely given," Eliza said in the dream, "I bind us beyond death, beyond time, beyond the veil between worlds. What was broken shall be made whole. What was lost shall be found again." As the dream Eliza drew the knife across her palm, Rose felt an answering sting in her own hand. She looked down to see the cut she had made earlier reopening, blood welling up through Dr. Walsh's handkerchief. "The circle completes," Dream Eliza continued, placing her bleeding palm against Matthias's forehead. "The covenant renews. Through darkness and light, through death and rebirth, we shall find each other again." Rose woke with a gasp, sitting upright in the unfamiliar bed. Moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room with silver light. Her hand throbbed, and when she unwrapped the handkerchief, she found the cut completely healed, replaced by a thin silver scar that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. A soft knock on the door drew her attention. "Come in," she called, hastily rewrapping her hand. It was Matthias. He entered the room cautiously, his expression grave. "Forgive the intrusion, but there is something you need to see." Rose followed him downstairs to the sitting room, where Dr. Walsh stood by the window, peering out into the night. When she turned to face Rose, her expression was grim. "The council has found us faster than anticipated," she said without preamble. They have surrounded the manor. Lord Cashin himself leads them. Rose moved to the window. In the moonlight, she could see figures surrounding the house, at least a dozen, all unnaturally still, their eyes gleaming like animals caught in headlights. "How did they find us so quickly?" she asked. "Blood calls to blood," Matthias replied. "When you shared yours with me, it created a connection that Lord Cashin could sense. He is the oldest of us, with powers I can only guess at." Dr. Walsh moved to the codex, which lay open on the table. "There is another explanation," she said, her voice tight with anger. "The final pages of the codex have been removed. Someone has betrayed the order." Matthias's expression darkened. "First my household, now yours. It seems Lord Cashin's influence reaches further than either of us suspected." "What does he want?" Rose asked, though she already knew the answer. "You," Matthias said simply. "Your blood, your power, the fulfillment of the prophecy on his terms rather than yours. He will not leave without you." Dr. Walsh straightened her shoulders. "Then we fight. The manor's defenses will not hold against a vampire of Cashin's age and power," Matthias interrupted. "Not for long. And when they fail, everyone inside will die." Rose looked between them, these two ancient adversaries who had set aside centuries of enmity to protect her. "There must be another way. Something in the prophecy. Something in my blood." "There is," Matthias said quietly. "But I would not ask it of you." Understanding dawned on Rose. "The transformation. If I complete the ritual with you, if I offer my blood to break your curse, would that stop Lord Cashin?" "It would do more than stop him," Matthias replied, his voice low and intense. "It would change everything. The power that would be released when your blood mingles with mine in the ritual would be enough to destroy any vampire who tried to interfere. But Rose, the cost to you would be transformation," she finished for him. "Becoming something neither human nor vampire. Walking between worlds." Dr. Walsh stepped forward. "Rose, please consider carefully. This is not just about tonight or Lord Cashin. This is about the rest of your life. The prophecy speaks of transformation, yes, but also of binding, an unbreakable connection between you and Prince Matthias that would transcend death itself. Are you prepared for that?" Rose closed her eyes, thinking of the dream, of Eliza and her ritual, of the words that had seemed to come from across centuries. "Through darkness and light, through death and rebirth, we shall find each other again." When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. "I need to see the ritual chamber. I know there is one in this house." Dr. Walsh looked pained but resigned. "Beneath the library. There is a hidden staircase behind the third bookcase." As they made their way to the library, a tremendous crash shook the manor, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Lord Cashin's forces had begun their assault. "We do not have much time," Matthias said, urgency making his movements even faster, more fluid. "The outer wards will slow them, but not for long." The library was a magnificent room, 2 stories tall with bookcases reaching toward a painted ceiling. The third bookcase, as Dr. Walsh had indicated, concealed a narrow stone staircase that spiraled down into darkness. Matthias led the way, his supernatural vision making a light unnecessary, with Rose following and Dr. Walsh bringing up the rear. The ritual chamber was ancient, predating even the manor above it. Circular in shape, with a domed ceiling carved with symbols similar to those on Rose's pendant, it contained a raised platform at its center surrounded by channels carved into the stone floor. The air hummed with contained power, like the moment before lightning strikes. "This place was old when Eliza and I first came here," Matthias said, his voice hushed with reverence. "It has been used for blood rituals since before recorded history. The power contained within these walls will amplify the prophecy's effects." Dr. Walsh moved to a cabinet built into the wall and removed several items. a silver bowl, an ornate dagger with a crystal hilt, and a small vial of clear liquid. These are the ritual implements mentioned in the codex, she explained, placing them on the platform. The dagger to draw blood, the bowl to collect it, the elixir to stabilize the transformation. Above them, the sounds of battle grew louder. The crash of breaking furniture and the inhuman screams of wounded vampires filtered down the staircase, suggesting that the manor's defenses were putting up a significant fight. "We must hurry," Matthias said, his eyes flashing crimson with urgency. "Lord Cashin will sense what we are attempting and try to stop us before the ritual is complete." Rose approached the platform, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. "What do I need to do?" Dr. Walsh handed her the dagger. "According to the codex, you must speak the words of binding while offering your blood freely. Prince Matthias must accept it without taking more than is offered. The balance is crucial. Too little and the transformation will fail. Too much and both of you could be lost." "The words," Rose prompted. "What are they?" "They will come to you," Matthias said with certainty. "The blood remembers." Rose stepped onto the platform, the dagger cool in her hand. Matthias joined her, standing so close she could feel the unnatural stillness of his body, the absence of breath or heartbeat that marked him as undead. "Are you certain?" he asked one final time, his voice barely a whisper. "There will be no going back from this." Rose looked into his eyes, those inhuman eyes that had haunted her dreams before she knew they existed, and felt a certainty that transcended logic or reason. "I have been walking toward this moment my entire life," she said, "perhaps for centuries before that." Without further hesitation, Rose raised the dagger and pressed its sharp edge against her palm, reopening the cut from earlier. Blood welled immediately, bright and vibrant in the dim light of the ritual chamber. As the first drop fell into the silver bowl, words rose unbidden to her lips, ancient words in a language she had never learned but somehow understood perfectly. "By blood freely given, I break the chains of darkness. By compassion freely offered, I restore what was taken. Blood to blood, heart to heart, soul to soul, I bind us beyond death, beyond time, beyond the veil between worlds." The chamber began to vibrate, the symbols on the ceiling glowing with an internal light that grew brighter with each word. Rose continued, her voice gaining strength as the ritual progressed. "What was broken shall be made whole. What was lost shall be found again. Through darkness and light, through death and rebirth, we shall walk together as neither living nor dead, but something new." Matthias knelt before her, echoing the position of his younger self in Rose's dream. When he spoke, his voice blended with hers in perfect harmony. "I accept this gift freely given. I surrender the darkness that has claimed me. I offer protection, devotion, and faith until the stars themselves burn out. Blood to blood, heart to heart, soul to soul." Rose extended her bleeding hand, and Matthias took it reverently between his own. As his lips touched her wound, the chamber exploded with light so intense it should have been blinding. Yet Rose found she could see through it, beyond it, to realities that had always existed alongside her own but had remained invisible until this moment. She saw Matthias as he had been in life, young, vital, human, and as he was now, a creature of darkness struggling toward the light. She saw herself reflected in his blood memory, a woman with compassion strong enough to offer shelter to a monster in the rain, courage enough to face ancient prophecies, and love enough to bind herself to someone who had walked in darkness for 6 centuries. The transformation began with a rush of heat that started where Matthias's lips met her wound and spread throughout her body. Rose felt as though her blood had turned to liquid fire, burning away everything that was merely human and leaving something brighter, more powerful in its place. Her senses sharpened to supernatural acuity. She could hear heartbeats 3 floors above, smell the distinctive scent of each person and vampire in the manor, see the individual motes of dust floating in the air. Simultaneously, she witnessed Matthias's transformation through their newly formed bond. The darkness that had sustained and corrupted him for 6 centuries was burning away, replaced by something that was not quite human life but was no longer undeath. His heart, dormant for centuries, stuttered and then began to beat, not with the rhythm of a human heart, but with a slower, steadier pulse that matched her own newly altered heartbeat. As the ritual reached its climax, the door to the chamber burst open, and Lord Cashin stormed in. He was everything a vampire lord should be, beautiful, terrible, and ancient beyond reckoning. His eyes were black as the void between stars, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "Stop this abomination," he commanded, his power rolling through the chamber like a physical force. But he was too late. The ritual was complete, the transformation irreversible. Rose and Matthias stood together on the platform, their hands still joined, their bodies glowing with an inner light that pushed back the darkness Lord Cashin brought with him. "It is done, Cashin," Matthias said. His voice changed, deeper, richer, vibrating with new power. "The prophecy is fulfilled, but not as you feared. Not as either of us expected." Lord Cashin snarled, revealing fangs longer and sharper than Matthias's had been. "You have no idea what you have done. The balance is restored." Rose finished for him, surprised by the authority in her own voice. "Not destroyed or upset, but returned to what it should have been all along." She could see it now with her newly enhanced perception. The intricate web of power that connected all supernatural beings, the delicate balance between light and dark, life and death. The ritual had not disrupted this balance but had healed a wound in it that had been festering for centuries. Lord Cashin took a step forward, his face contorted with rage. "I will not allow this. The Council has maintained order for millennia. What you have become threatens everything." "What we have become," Matthias said calmly, "is what was always intended, neither vampire nor human, but guardians of the threshold between. Your council was never meant to rule forever, Cashin. All things change, even immortals. Then I will destroy you both before that change can take root." Lord Cashin lunged forward with supernatural speed, his hands curved into claws capable of tearing flesh from bone. Rose did not think. She reacted. Raising her hand, she released a burst of power that flowed from her blood, through the bond she shared with Matthias, and into the physical world. The energy manifested as pure light, slamming into Lord Cashin mid-leap and throwing him back against the chamber wall with enough force to crack the ancient stone. "You cannot fight us here," Rose said, understanding flowing through her from sources both ancient and new. "This place is consecrated to blood rituals older than your council, older than vampirism itself. Your power has no dominion." Lord Cashin struggled to his feet, disbelief warring with fury on his perfect face. "What are you?" he hissed. "We are what comes next," Matthias replied, stepping forward to stand beside Rose. "The first of something new. Not the last vampires, but the first guardians." Dr. Walsh, who had been standing silently at the edge of the chamber, moved forward. "The prophecy never spoke of ending vampirism, Lord Cashin. It spoke of evolution, of balance restored through transformation, not destruction." Lord Cashin looked between the three of them, calculation replacing rage in his ancient eyes. "And what does this mean for the Council? For the order we have maintained?" "It means change," Rose said simply. "It means finding a new way to exist alongside humanity, not as predators but as protectors. It means remembering what your kind was before corruption turned you to darkness." For a long moment, Lord Cashin stood poised on the edge of violence. Then, with the fluid grace of a predator accepting that its prey has become something else entirely, he inclined his head in a gesture that was not quite submission but was no longer aggression. The council will want to see this new arrangement for themselves, he said carefully. I cannot speak for all, but I will carry your message. A truce, for now. A truce, Matthias agreed. And perhaps, in time, an alliance. Lord Cassion's smile was cold but not hostile. Perhaps. Time will tell, and we have nothing if not time. With a final assessing look at Rose, he turned and left the chamber, his departure as abrupt as his arrival. When he was gone, Dr. Walsh sagged against the wall, the tension of the confrontation finally catching up with her. That was unexpected. The order's text suggested Lord Cassion would rather die than accept change. He has not accepted it, Matthias said grimly. He has merely recognized that he cannot stop it. Not here, not now. There will be resistance, challenges, perhaps even war before this new balance takes hold. Rose nodded, feeling the truth of his words through their bond. But we will face it together, whatever comes next. Dr. Walsh straightened, her expression thoughtful. What exactly have you become? The Codex speaks of transformation but is frustratingly vague on the details. Rose looked at her hands, which appeared unchanged but through which she could now see the flow of her own altered blood, glowing with power that had always been there but had remained dormant until tonight. I am still me, she said slowly, but more. I can see things I could not see before, know things I should not know. And Matthias. I am no longer vampire, Matthias confirmed. My heart beats, though not as a human's. I breathe, though I do not need to. The hunger for blood is gone, replaced by something else. A hunger to protect, to maintain the balance we have restored. Dr. Walsh nodded, as if this confirmed something she had long suspected. Guardians, you called yourselves. Guardians of what exactly? The threshold? Rose replied, the knowledge flowing through her blood. The boundary between worlds, human and supernatural, living and dead, light and dark. Where these worlds touch, there must be those who ensure neither encroaches too far upon the other. A role the Order has tried to fulfill for centuries, Dr. Walsh mused, perhaps with limited success. The Order will still be needed, Matthias assured her, as will those vampires who choose to embrace this new way. The threshold is vast, and 2 guardians alone cannot maintain it. Rose felt exhaustion beginning to seep through her exhilaration. The transformation had demanded more of her than she had realized, and though her new nature provided strength beyond human limits, she was reaching the end of even those enhanced reserves. Matthias sensed her fatigue through their bond and gently took her hand. You need rest, he said. The transformation is complete, but your body and mind must adjust to what you have become. Dr. Walsh gestured toward the staircase. The fighting has stopped. It seems Lord Cassion has called off his forces. You can return to Eliza's room, your room now, I suppose, and recover your strength. As they ascended the stairs, Rose leaned against Matthias, drawing comfort from his presence. The bond between them hummed with energy, a connection deeper than anything she had imagined possible. Through it, she could feel his wonder, his gratitude, and beneath it all, a growing emotion that mirrored her own. I never expected this, she murmured as they reached the library. When I offered you my umbrella in the rain, I was just being kind to someone who seemed in pain. I had no idea. Matthias smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes completely, transforming his face from beautiful to radiant. You offered compassion to a monster. It is the oldest and most powerful magic there is. In the bedroom that had once belonged to Eliza Thornfield, Rose sat on the window seat, looking out at the night sky where the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the horizon. Matthias stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Will you be able to walk in the sunlight now? Rose asked, suddenly concerned. Matthias's expression was contemplative. I believe so. Not as a human would, but not in pain either. The sun will be a different experience. One I look forward to sharing with you. Rose covered his hand with hers, marveling at the warmth that now radiated from skin that had been cool to the touch just hours ago. I have so many questions about what we are, what we can do, what happens next. We have time to discover the answers together, Matthias assured her. More time than either of us had before. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, Rose and Matthias watched in silent wonder. The light touched Matthias's face, and rather than burning or causing pain, it seemed to illuminate him from within, highlighting the gold in his now hazel eyes and the subtle glow that emanated from his transformed being. "It is beautiful," he whispered, experiencing sunrise as something other than a death sentence for the first time in 6 centuries. "I had forgotten." Rose smiled, squeezing his hand. "There will be many sunrises. And rainstorms too." Matthias laughed, the sound rich and full of joy. "Perhaps next time, I will be the one offering an umbrella." As the sun rose fully over Ravenshire, bathing the ancient city in golden light, Rose and Matthias stood together at the threshold between night and day, between what they had been and what they had become. The prophecy was fulfilled, the transformation complete, but their story, the story that had begun with a simple act of compassion in the rain, was just beginning. And somewhere in the space between heartbeats, in the bond that connected them across time and transformation, echoed the truth that had always existed. She had offered her umbrella to a crying vampire prince, but he had always known their destiny.